If you're learning Spanish and find that you have a lot of vocabulary and grammar, but it's still difficult to speak and understand Spanish sentences in real-time conversations, that means that your Spanish mental models need to be strengthened. In this video, we'll talk about a step-by-step process for making the elements of Spanish second nature so that you can use them nimbly in a conversation until you can speak and listen smoothly and even juggle more than one thought at once, the same way you do in your native language. Note that this video builds off the previous video, Why Spanish is Overwhelming, so it'll probably make more sense if you watch that one first. In that video, we covered some of the technical aspects of why it can be overwhelming to speak your second language if you haven't developed your mental models yet. In this video, we'll talk about building those mental models so that you can conquer that overwhelm. Let's start with a simple real-world example. You're talking with a friend in Spanish and you freeze up while trying to say the sentence, "She gave it to me before she left," because that sentence is just a little bit too much for you to handle quickly in the middle of a conversation. Spanish is made of thousands of elements coming together in millions of possible combinations, but the mental models that lie behind Spanish can be reduced to a few hundred. For this particular sentence that we just used, here are some mental models you would need to master in order to be able to say it effortlessly. First, the indirect direct verb structure. Second, the antes de que idiom. Third, the verb dar and the way that its forms are used. And fourth, the verb irse and the way that its forms are used. That's a lot to think about at once. In English, assuming that's your first language, when you say, "She gave it to me before she left," you don't have to juggle a lot of concepts at once. It flows naturally. Let's make your Spanish flow naturally by developing these abstract mental models until they're intuitive. I'm guessing you already have some vocabulary in Spanish that's fairly easy to use, such as some basic nouns and adjectives. For example, saying casa instead of house doesn't take a whole lot of mental energy or focus. This type of vocabulary is fairly easy to use the way you would use it in English. The real difficulties lie in the more grammatically complex ideas, those places where Spanish just doesn't line up perfectly with English. These harder words, such as verbs and pronouns, along with complex units of language, such as idioms, are the ones that tend to trip you up. At the same time, these are the exact words that are super handy to have ready on command. Let's take advantage of this because if you manage to turn the most common verbs and pronouns into second-nature mental models, you can combine that with just a few hundred simple vocabulary words and start having conversations on a variety of topics in endless combinations. Simply memorizing these grammatically complex words is not enough. To turn them into usable mental models, you need to apply a diligent, active practice strategy. The retrieval methods that I described in the video, How to Study Spanish, will help you out, especially if you specifically focus on switching verb tenses and pronouns in a variety of contexts. For now, let's go over some simple strategies for making pronouns and verbs more natural. First, let's start with pronouns. The basic pattern for turning pronouns into mental models is a three-step process. First, memorize a related list of about 5 words at a time. For example, the direct objects me, te, lo, la, and nos. Make sure you can recall all 5 and what they mean from memory. Second, practice a sentence context that could use any of these pronouns, saying it out loud, but switching between pronouns. For example, me encontraron, te encontraron, lo encontraron, la encontraron, and nos encontraron. Third, start integrating more and more variety and randomness as you practice. Create more sentence examples and also shuffle your direct object flashcards into other Spanish flashcards. That way there's less and less predictability when you encounter direct objects. As you do this over the course of a couple of weeks, you'll find that direct object pronouns in Spanish become more and more automatic. You'll find yourself using the correct pronoun in the correct place in the sentence automatically. Congratulations, a new mental model has been formed and is becoming intuitive. For verbs, you do basically the same thing. Pick about 5 conjugations of a verb that you want to memorize. For example, if you're working on dar, you might pick 5 of the most common first-person forms: doy, damos, di, dimos, and daré. Second, choose a sentence example to start with. Maybe, te doy esto, te damos esto, te di esto, te dimos esto, and te daré esto. Third, integrate more and more conjugations of dar, and also start integrating more and more variety and randomness as you practice. Create more complex sentence examples and also shuffle these flashcards into your other Spanish flashcards. Soon you'll find yourself using dar easily and naturally. It may not be automatic very soon, but it will be easier and easier to find the right conjugation at the right time. If you practice effectively, using a dar conjugation in context will soon become a single chunk, a single item in your juggling act rather than 3 or 4. Your conscious focus will be freed up to think about other things while you're speaking Spanish, all because you put in the effort to develop these mental models. Now let's take all of this to the next level. Entire sentence structures can be mental models too. When your mind has an easy time accessing entire sentences from its library of mental models, speaking Spanish gets easier and easier. For complex tasks like this, I recommend a study process that Barbara Oakley lays out in her excellent book, A Mind for Numbers. This 7-step process was designed for math and science students, but I've adapted it for Spanish students here. I recommend writing these 7 steps down as you watch this. If you try this method just once today, I guarantee it will transform the way that you learn Spanish. Step 1. Study a Spanish sentence whose structure and grammar gives you some difficulty. Pick a sentence that was written by native speakers. Don't choose just a random fake example from a bad textbook. After you're familiar with the sentence, put it away and try to write or speak that sentence from memory. Then compare to the original and see if you got it right. Step 2. Write a variation on this sentence, changing either the tense, the pronouns, or another aspect of the sentence that you find challenging. The new sentence should be extremely similar in structure to the original. Usually, just 1 or 2 words are going to change. For example, the sentence "me lo dio antes de que se fue" might change to "me lo dan antes de que se van." Step 3 is actually to take a break. Study something unrelated, or go do something active, such as doing housework or taking a walk around the block. This is actually extremely important to the process. Basically, by taking a break from this topic, you're actually going to strengthen it because your subconscious mind will start to work on it in new ways in the background. Step 4. Return to the same sentence later the same day, ideally just before going to bed. First, write the original sentence from memory and see if you got it right, just like in Step 1. Then, write yet another variation on it like you did in Step 2. Focus on the parts of the sentence that are giving you trouble. Step 5. The next day, return to the same sentence again. Now that you've slept on it, you'll find that writing it from memory, Step 1, and writing a variation on it, Step 2, is much more familiar and natural. Still, give special focus to the aspect of the sentence that you find tricky. Step 6. Based on what you found challenging while studying that sentence, choose a new native written Spanish sentence to study. Once you've found a good sentence example that's going to challenge you, do steps 1 through 5 again using this new sentence. After that, choose yet another sentence. Step 7. As you continue to accrue more and more challenging sentences, do what Barbara Oakley calls active repetitions, which means reviewing the sentences in your mind while doing something active, such as working out, doing housework, or commuting. That's it. As Barbara Oakley says, what you're doing is building and strengthening an increasingly interconnected web of neurons, enriching and strengthening your chunks, which is another word for mental models. This makes use of what is known as the generation effect. Generating, that is recalling, the material helps you learn it much more effectively than simply rereading it. Remember, just piecing together a Spanish sentence with the book open in front of you doesn't guarantee that you could construct the sentence on the fly in a Spanish conversation. Plus, as Barbara Oakley says, research has shown that the more effort you put into recalling material, the deeper it embeds itself in your memory. Recall, not simple reading, is the best form of deliberate practice in study. Let's wrap up. Next time you look at a page of Spanish and feel overwhelmed seeing nothing but a wall of text, don't be discouraged. This is simply telling you that you haven't quite mastered the mental models required to understand this page of text. Combine the mental models idea with a growth mindset, and then also use the testing and retrieval practice ideas that we talk about in other videos to build those mental models that you find lacking. And you'll quickly get to the point that the wall of text is now something you can glance at and understand. By the way, if you're looking to learn Spanish online using these techniques, the Accelerated Spanish course will help you make Spanish syntax second nature. You'll get to work with native-speaking Spanish linguists who will train you to speak, understand, read, and write Spanish fluently. Accelerated Spanish is the only online course that guarantees fluency, and it gets results faster than any other Spanish course. You can start using Accelerated Spanish for free at SpanishVideoCourse.com, or subscribe to this YouTube channel to continue watching all the Spanish lessons that we publish here.